I have up next live Dr. Jack Kriendler will be joining us in just a moment. Here he is. All right. Jack, welcome to the interview. We're so happy to have you here. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself and why you decided that you wanted to come to Exponential Medicine?
So this is actually my fourth Exponential Medicine. So
how about it? You're a veteran.
The reason I'm coming back is probably because I would be arrested if I didn't actually turn up. Well, I mean, for me, Exponential Medicine, as is pretty clear to most people that have come here at least once, is really the time of the year where the best thinking, freest minds in the industry, both professional, patient, payer, on the technology side, they get together and really start to look at where we're going in the future, defining the path, how to overcome the barriers, and it's an extremely refreshing environment to be in for anyone like myself who's in the rather obstructed world sometimes of the medical profession itself. So.
Right, right. Well, Jack, I know that you are the founder and chief medical officer of Sentrian Incorporated. Could you tell us a little bit about that company? And again, what is it that you see is going to intersect most here while you're at Exponential Medicine?
Sure. So Sentrian was actually an SU Labs company, one of the first ones.
How about it?
Born out of my first visit here in 2012. And essentially what we saw around this time was this, exponential advance in the way in which devices were miniaturizing what we could get from people's bodies and sense from them, together with obviously the massive increases in the cost crisis that we're seeing in complex chronic disease and hospitalization costs. What Sentrian does is it is a machine intelligence company that makes sense of the data streams that you can get from people in their homes, with the sole purpose of eliminating preventable hospitalization.
That's fantastic. So I want to learn a little bit more if you can share us. I know that that's kind of the holy grail as far as making data accessible and really uniform so that it's usable. How is it that Sentrian, does it have a back-end platform to kind of aggregate all of that data? Or what is it that you do to really collect that information so that you really can help someone improve their health?
Sure. So the first thing is that it's not so much the back-end technology that's really that important. What's more important is a back-end platform in the industry.
Right. Right.
We need to build a missing gear between hospital and home.
Right.
That today is partially filled by some organizations who are forward-thinking in the States, who take on risk for people with complex chronic disease, and their sole aim is to keep people out of hospital. If they are healthier and happier at home, they get rewarded. If they go crashing into hospital really sick, they lose. And so the incentives are there, but those incentives need to grow throughout the whole industry. And at the moment there are only pockets, although all the big vanguards of innovation in the healthcare industry, both on the payer's side and on the provider's side, are building that missing gear.
Absolutely. So, I know from your background that you are a serial entrepreneur. You have had many solutions in market. What is it that you would advise someone who's really looking to break into healthcare? What's kind of the critical things they should know up front so that they really can help to move the needle forward?
Unlike a lot of areas of technology, I think it's quite fair to say that experiments are difficult in healthcare for a lot of reasons. Technology can be transformative, but potentially when you're dealing with people's lives, it can be deadly. So regulation has always erred on the side of caution. And I think anyone entering into the, not so much the health tech space, but more the real med tech space where you're doing clinical decision support rather than kind of wellness, really needs to be aware of the regulatory pitfalls. And I think also truly understanding where the problems are, who's hurting whose pockets, and trying to align the interests of the payers, the providers, and the patients. So fitting technology to a genuine set of problems rather than just creating technology and making up a problem that it solves.
Right, right. Can you tell us from your own experience, again, I know that you've created many companies, but you mentioned that Sentrian is a product of Singularity University. Did they help you identify what those problems might be, or how was it that you were really able to distill out, these are the problems that I want to help solve?
Sure. The one thing which I gathered from it was the simple fact that we won't be able to afford healthcare. My family, myself, my children won't be able to afford healthcare if the problems are escalating in the way that they are.
Right.
Plus the the obvious demonstration at Exponential Medicine, as it was called Future Med in those days,
Right.
of some of the technology solutions that were beginning to cost incredibly small amounts of money, were connected, were long battery life, that could sense stuff that normally you'd have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on big expensive kit that only very clever people could understand the data from. And so that's really just seeing the problem and seeing some early pieces of the technology, and then Sentrian came about to basically fill in the missing gaps,
Okay.
to actually make sense of the sensors, and finally bring hospital-grade monitoring into people's homes. But instead of needing human beings to interpret it, we use machine intelligence to do that.
Understood. I think that one of the themes that I think will be explored here, it's at Exponential Medicine too, is how do we bridge, so you've talked about bridging the hospital to home environment. How is it that we make sure that the technology isn't so far advanced that it forgets the challenges like social determinants of health, be that income level or poverty or education? How is it that you see Sentrian in particular making sure that it understands the person, the holistic person, and not just one slice of that person?
Yeah. So one of the things we do in our interview process is actually ask about people's own personal experiences of looking after their own, disadvantaged, vulnerable, or otherwise relatives or friends or people that they know. For us, it's incredibly important to, again, not just take fancy technology and try and fit it into people's homes, but to address what is going to be an ever greater problem of larger gaps between generations, people living further away from each other, isolation, wealth gaps, wealth differentials, and access to what we would call gold standard is not across the entire country or for all people across the globe. So for us it's incredibly important, but to be able to take the equivalent decision-making processes that would go on inside a team of the best clinicians in the best hospitals in the world, and get the same kind of equipment that you might get in those hospitals, and have the equivalent of that in your home as a way of listening to really what's going on inside the lives and inside the bodies of those people and the sentiments of their loved ones and caregivers, interpret that and raise the alarm way in advance of them seeing clinical problems and then being rushed to hospital, is actually a democratization in itself. And we hope that will extend beyond the economic environments of developed countries also into the developing world too.
Well, Jack, it sounds like you've really created a model that is really worth being scaled and hopefully adopted across more than just the companies that you meet here, but so many individuals who would benefit from it. So thank you for joining us today here at the Guidewell Insights Lounge. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.